What is going on, YouTube? What is going on, fellow fantasy people? And as always, what is up, the Catch fam? You already know what time it is, man. We are here for the annual Catch podcast. It is your boy John, and Steven is in the house. What's going on, man?
Nothing much, man. Just about to break down the best division in all of football, the NFC West, right here. Most competitive, hands down, top to bottom. It's no competition
No doubt,
to see
man.
who the best one is.
Could see all these teams somehow making the playoffs if that's possible, but
It really is like 1 through 4. All these guys could have a Super Bowl run, in my opinion.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. And some NFL news for the week. Your boy Carson Wentz practiced today. Looking hopeful for week 1. I don't know if you have any thoughts as a little Colts fan over there.
Yeah, he looked good. There's a video that went out of him like cutting back and forth while he was running down the field. Sent it out to Ben, our Eagles friend, or a fan, and he was talking about how he looked like he was about to tear his ACL every time he did a cut. So I can't really deny with that comment, to be honest, because it did scare me.
Nonetheless, it's positive news, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Other than that, not a whole lot going on. I mean, we got Cam Newton missing a couple days, got tested at the wrong place or has COVID or something. We're not really sure, but Cam Newton missed a couple days of practice. Nothing to really stress about. But let's break down real quickly some of these preseason games. What stood out to you over the last weekend of preseason football?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was fun. Great to see live action again. I think one of the biggest takeaways I had was just that, those headliner quarterbacks, those rookie quarterbacks kind of have been showing out. I mean, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, they've all kind of balled out when they've gotten their chance. Mac Jones has been basically as good as advertised. He's been a model of efficiency. He did look kind of like a young Tom Brady out there, honestly. There was one play I texted you after it. And there was a penalty on the play, but he did this like in the pocket type of scramble where he was dodging defenders, looking slow, but so mobile in terms of just, evasiveness within the pocket. Made a nice pass.
Baby.
Yeah, mac and cheese is looking good.
Mac.
I mean, but Cam Newton's played decent too, so we'll see how that goes.
I think a quick note is, Mac Jones has this like lingering knee injury, and we saw that on display on one of those scrambles where he popped up and just a little slow to get up. And it's hard to tell if it was just frustration from the play, if it was serious, but I think that puts some stock into Cam Newton being out on the field, as well as, like you said, Cam Newton playing well so far this preseason. So definitely something to monitor as well.
But I tell you what, on the other hand, you got guys like Trey Lance and Justin Fields. Yeah. Justin Fields has been cooking. They got blown out by the Bills. I'm not really too worried about that. But
Mitchell's revenge game.
Yeah, dude, Trubisky's revenge game, dude. He came full force and just lit them the hell up. But Justin Fields was looking good. He's had some rushing touchdowns, passing touchdowns. He's done some dimes. That's been good. That's been really good, I think, to see, because the NFL, this guy is ready to unleash the revenge of being really undervalued.
Hey, what about Zach Wilson, man? I have to admit, I'm surprised about Zach Wilson. He looks good, man.
He looks good. The reason I didn't identify him or Trevor Lawrence was because I wasn't as impressed with what I've seen out of those two. But at the same time, like, they have played well. Just Zach Wilson in particular, I felt like he's played better than I thought he was going to throughout the preseason.
I mean, although Green Bay had not even their second stringers out there, but nonetheless, it's a good sign, right?
I just want to see these guys come out and not look like they're overwhelmed, which I don't think any of them have. I think Trey Lance has been probably the most exciting to watch, because when you watch this dude just absolutely rip the ball, he's got that Patrick Mahomes flair. So I think, I can just tell Kyle Shanahan is sitting back there and he's like, gosh, I just want to start in week 1. I don't give a shit. This guy looks really damn talented.
I think if anything, if they're not going to start in week 1, they're just giving him more time to prepare, right? They're just giving him more time to get used to the offense and the speed of the game and more practice reps. But I had the same feeling that that's the guy that Kyle wants out there. I mean, obviously, you trade up to get him. We can save some of that talk for our Niners breakdown. But, this guy that I want to throw out there, well, first of all, right, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a little bit of an injury too in this past week. I've gone over some of the mock drafts, but yeah, it's scary, right? It's not a high ankle sprain, so that's good, right? But it's still an ankle
Mhm.
sprain, and it's going to be probably something that's lingering for the next couple of weeks. So I would add Darrell Williams in that backfield to your
Yeah.
fantasy board, and I don't know, it hurts the value, fantasy value of Clyde Edwards-Helaire a lot. So
It really does.
yeah.
Both of us have been super high on him and talked about drafting him pretty early. There was already buzz about, Darrell Williams kind of taking in the red zone touches. So if he actually misses time, this could be an issue for him. I think Williams could maybe start seeing a little bit more time than expected originally.
Yeah, he's a good back. Like, he's a
Yeah, no, he is
serviceable
good.
back. He
He's a
can
vet.
play. So
He's got Andy
uh,
Reid's trust.
yeah. One last guy I want to throw out here. I don't know to say his name. He's on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pat Freiermuth, the tight
Oh
end.
yeah, dude. Yeah.
Dude, this guy needs to
Cooking.
be on your fantasy boards, especially in deeper leagues. Uh, Big Ben showed that he trusts this guy, man. Like he was,
Yeah.
I mean, 2 touchdowns. He looks good out there, man. This is my sleeper player right now. This is the guy that I'm going to be rooting for all season. Whether if he never sees a snap again or if he has a breakout rookie year, this is my guy. Pat F is what I'm going to call him on the Steelers. That's my biggest takeaway from these preseason games. I was sitting there watching that like second
Dude,
touchdown.
did you see that? Did you see that like passer that Ben threw? He like gave him the hard pump
Yeah, yeah,
fake
yeah,
and then
yeah.
just put it right. Ben looked kind of good too. So
Yeah.
that's another thing to keep your eyes on.
Hey,
But
and don't forget that the Steelers were 11-0 last year, right? So,
yeah, they had a
I mean,
bad ending though.
they had a rough ending, but at some
Yeah.
point they were 11-0.
Yeah.
They can still win some games.
But
So,
hey man, they've always loved that tight end. Heath Miller, maybe it's Heath Miller 2.0.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So,
Yeah.
that's my guy, my player to track. And one last note, as I just said, we had one last note. Patty Mahomes, if he had his full offense on the field in
Hmm.
that game, I mean, amazing interception he threw, made an interception look good. But nonetheless, Patty Mahomes, man, he's going to be
He's as good
good.
as that. Yeah, he's as good
Yeah,
as always. He's
yeah,
still your fantasy QB number one, man. I mean, this
yeah,
guy's elite.
yeah.
Um, I
Well,
will say though, I've got one fantasy sleeper or guy to keep an eye on. It's
yeah,
Patriots running back Ramondre Stevenson. His first game against Washington had over 120 yards and a touchdown. He had like an 80-yard rushing touchdown. Built like a tank. He's like 240, 6'5", and runs really nimble. And then the second game he had 70 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. I mean, this guy is really earning Bill Belichick's trust. He's had 15 plus carries. I mean, every game. I mean, I think Bill is going to really give it to him. Now, maybe he's not like a fantasy asset necessarily, but he's going to eat into Damian Harris's touches. And
yeah.
so that's pretty sketchy. And I don't know if you've been watching it, but they seem to be using Sony Michel a lot in the past game
Oh
too.
yeah, yeah.
Like Damian Harris is looking sketch.
My fantasy stock in Damian Harris has gone way down since these preseason
Yeah.
games. And I mean, it's the same tale of Bill Belichick and those running backs, right?
Hmm.
You just never know what the fuck Bill's gonna do.
Yeah. You don't. You
Yeah,
don't.
and it's just they're like the main example of a team to stay away from
Hmm.
at the running back position in fantasy. So, but a lot of exciting. I mean, hey, NFL season's right around the corner, man. We've been saying it for weeks, and it's getting closer and closer. And
Yep.
it was exciting to watch Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray, one of the quarterbacks we're going to talk about tonight, get on the field this past weekend, as well as a lot of these other preseason games. So
Yeah.
let's jump right into it, man. I'm going to let you break down the San Francisco 49ers that kick off this NFC West division. A damn good division, a lot of good
Yeah.
teams, and this is one of the teams where they're a really good football team, right? With a lot of good players. So I'll let you start, and let's get going, man.
Yeah, this is an elite team, top down. They've just been plagued by injuries over the past 2 years. This defense in particular, I mean, I got Bosa on, but this defense is raw, man. Got Ken Law in the middle of it too that they drafted. I mean, I think this defense is going to come back with vengeance next year, fully healthy, fully loaded. Obviously, they're going to be without Richard Sherman, but that defense has led to a very productive offense in the past, right? Now they retool, kind of get that quarterback position beefed up. Obviously, we'll discuss Trey Lance, but they got Jimmy G right there too. But another guy, they bring in Trey Sermon. They got that offense at receiver that's already loaded too. So really, like you were saying, like a really good team here. Actually, one of my favorites in terms of NFC teams to come out and maybe make it to the Super Bowl. I think as we get closer and closer to the season, this is going to be the team I make my future on in terms of who will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I just love the coaching staff. I love the team personnel. Getting George Kittle back, it's a sexy team, dude.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and 2 years ago, this team was in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
And a
yeah,
lot of people are forgetting about that, I feel like.
yeah,
So now
yeah.
the Super Bowl loss hangover is a big thing, but also keep in mind that they weren't just in the Super Bowl; they were beating the Chiefs in the
Mhm.
Super Bowl for some time in that game. And
And there were some questionable calls that if they
sure,
went different ways, they would have. And if Jimmy G just threw it in not like an imbecile, they would have thrown a huge deep touchdown pass. So I
well,
mean,
I also think there are some bad coaching calls too, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
nonetheless, yeah,
yeah, let's break down the trio here. I mean, I'd start. I mean, I think Jimmy G is going to start week one. I think you would agree with that too. Am I right?
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but Trey Lance, man, I love him. I think you love him too. I think because we're such big Patrick Mahomes fans, it's really hard to look at Trey Lance and not see that. I mean, when he throws the ball, his ability to just hit any sort of pass, he can also run like a beast. I mean, this guy at North Dakota State, I mean, he was cooking, dude. His early comp wasn't Mahomes or anything. It was actually Lamar Jackson. So that's how lethal this guy is on the ground. But his arm ability is also unworldly. He can make any pass needed. But what separated him from the rest of the quarterbacks apparently was his decision making. Apparently, Kyle Shanahan, that just fell in love with that. Like his ability to read the defense instantaneously and just make those quick reads. Now, this is actually different than Patrick Mahomes because coming out, Mahomes didn't study defenses or read up on defensive coverages until like 3 years into the league. He came out and said that. So
Yeah.
I think he like Trey Lance also being in this offense. I mean, shit, dude, he is an instant lock for me to take late in my drafts, dude, because the ceiling is untapped.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like we stated at the beginning of this podcast, I do think this is the guy that Shanahan wants out there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and in my opinion, it's just a matter of time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have a very serviceable QB1 who's gotten you to a Super Bowl. Like we just also discussed, maybe potentially helped lose you a Super Bowl. But nonetheless, Jimmy Garoppolo has proven that he can get your team to the playoffs with, I mean, barring any injuries to this defense or, I mean, to this offensive line or at any skill position players, right? So I think they have time to continue to let Trey Lance develop. But in this division that's completely loaded, if you're coming out and you're losing some football games to start the season, that
Yeah.
pressure is just going to continue to mount and mount until the fans are going to want Trey Lance on the
Oh
field,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think it is important that they give Trey Lance enough time, similar to that of Patrick Mahomes, who sat behind Alex Smith. I see this situation very, very similar. Um,
Really.
I think, I mean, obviously the Niners gave up a lot more stock to go out and pick
A
Trey
lot of
Lance.
capital. A
But
lot of
don't forget
capital.
that the Chiefs gave up some stock to trade up
Mm-hmm.
and select
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes too, just a little bit later in that draft. Um, but nonetheless, yeah, I see this as a very similar situation where you've got a starter who can get you there, right? Who
Yeah.
can be of service, right? And I mean, for all the knocks that we can make on what Jimmy Garoppolo's done, I do think that he can provide that veteran presence and that mentorship
Yeah.
as well. So, like I said, it's going to be very difficult for them to not get Trey Lance out on the field. But if he isn't on the field until the end of the season or even until next season, I don't think it's a negative. I think in the long run, it's a positive. But that's just my 2 cents. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that it's just crazy if you look at Trey Lance's numbers back from 2019 at North Dakota State. This guy had 28 passing touchdowns, 0 picks, 3,000 yards basically, and then 1,100 rushing yards and 14 rushing
yeah,
touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is insane. Like, and North Dakota State has been a powerhouse in football. So, like, this is not a team to sneeze at. I mean, obviously, it's not like a big deal D1 school, but North
Sure.
Dakota State could go like D1 single A and wreck some teams, yo.
I mean, that's where your boy Carson went. So,
It
I
is.
mean,
Yeah, it
yeah.
is. Hey, and this guy's way better than Carson, in my
Sure.
opinion. But
Sure. I mean,
no,
one game. So yeah, I mean, one game played last year, 149 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 143 rushing yards, and 2 rushing
yeah,
touchdowns. So,
I mean,
um,
he's so well balanced and he's also thick as hell, too. This guy's
yeah,
built like a machine. So I'm not worried about him taking a hit and getting hurt. You know what I mean? Like Lamar is built very slim and skinny, although he still doesn't get hurt because he just doesn't get touched. But Trey Lance, like, he can run through some guys, I
yeah,
feel like. I mean, this
yeah.
guy's built like a shit, stack house, dude. This guy's a
And we know
beast.
how you feel about those built men, right? So,
Yes, you do, brother. Yes, you do.
uh,
But hey, another built guy
yeah,
and Trey Sermon and the running back, they also spent a lot of draft capital to go out and get.
yeah,
And the fact that they've been spending all this draft capital, trading up, getting these guys, I just feel like Kyle Shanahan is like, dude, I'm so fucking sick of losing. Like that we are a good team. We're a great team. Like it's time to win now, not later. And so
yeah,
they are just trading all their assets. They're taking that Ram strategy of saying like, shit, we don't need the draft picks. Just use the draft picks to get the right guys.
yeah,
They bring in Trey Sermon, right? And that's why Trey Sermon is the RB that I selected for my trio, despite the fact that they've got guys like Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, obviously. I mean, really talented guys, but I'm taking Trey Sermon because Kyle Shanahan said, you know what? I know we got a good running back crew, but we're going to trade up the capital to get this guy. And Trey Sermon at Ohio State was an absolute machine, dude, just an absolute beast. Really thick, can make really good cuts too. I mean, and he's been killing it in training camp too.
yeah.
He's been kind of the guy that's been making the buzz in training camp. And I think that's a really important piece.
I don't know, man. You kind of failed to mention my guy Wayne Gallman.
Oh my gosh, dude. I hate Bruce Wayne Gallman,
Well,
dude.
dude, I mean, uh, he's a pretty serviceable back as well to add to
He was
this
good for the Giants, yo. He was good for the
extremely
Giants.
loaded backfield, in my opinion, which the past like 2 years, this 49ers backfield has just been completely stacked. And I think
Yeah,
from a fantasy perspective, it makes it very difficult to
it
evaluate.
does.
Um, and yeah, I think Trey Sermon could certainly be the guy there, but I think it's really hard to look at these running backs and not assume that they're all going to cut into one another's carries.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's one, it's part of that spread offense. It's something that Kyle Shanahan likes to do is he likes to utilize different running backs in
Mhm.
their system. So, um, yeah, I think Trey Sermon has the ability to have a great rookie year, but I think it's going to also be negatively impacted by the way this offense is ran and by the other running backs on this team. I feel like if this was a normal offense, right? Raheem Mostart would be like a top 10 running back the last two
He's so
years.
talented,
Yeah,
dude.
he's
He's
so
so
good.
talented. Yeah,
But
and don't get it twisted. The reason I didn't pick him wasn't because I have any knock on him.
sure, sure, no,
I just think there's been so much drama about Raheem Mostert maybe not even being on this team. And it's like, I kind of want him to be gone because I think I want him to get a chance to be like a do it all back because this
yeah,
guy is lethal, lethal.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, look, I got a couple questions that kind of parallel from this running back position with this Niners team for you. Because I've seen, in your mock drafts and as well as like when I'm doing my mock drafts, we'll see Trey Sermon on the board. We'll see Raheem Mostert on the board. And we never really take our shot on this guy. Like we
yeah.
don't go after either of these guys.
Well, for me, it's just what I just talked about. Like, I'm hesitant about the backfield overall,
Yeah.
because I know that they're just going to eat into one another's carries. Like, the last 2 years, I've gone out and targeted a 49ers running back because of where you can typically draft them. And it's similar to their wide receiver crew as well. It's a really hard offense to evaluate from a fantasy perspective because at each position other than tight end, obviously, right? Everyone is cutting into each other's value. It doesn't mean that any of them are bad football players or not being utilized, but everyone eats into one another's value. And yeah, I'm hesitant to pick these guys. I mean,
Would
shout
you
out.
take Oh, go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
to say shout out to our subscriber made for TV underscore who brought this up a little bit in the comments saying that he's a 49ers fan and that he's really big on going out and getting a guy like Raheem Mostert this year.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just a gamble to me.
Yeah.
Uh, it, I think it can certainly work out, right? And I think Kyle Shanahan's shown some faith in Trey Sermon and him being the guy, but I think at the end of the day, like I've already stated, they're just going to cut into each other's carries, and you're going to see points in the season where it looks like there's one of these guys who's the most fantasy relevant, and
Yeah.
one of them might be on the waiver wire, and you might go out and get them. And then they've done this in the past with different running backs, right? Where you go out and you get that guy, and for a week he puts up 28 points, and then the next 3 weeks combined he puts up 6 points. So it's just
I tell you
difficult to
what,
evaluate.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah, I tell you what, though. When looking at this and kind of analyzing how I've done the mock drafts in the past and how I look at this board of running backs that is pretty loaded, you see Raheem Mostert. I think he will be the main ball carrier for this offense week one.
sure.
And let's look at their schedule until their bye week, right? Detroit, Philadelphia, Green Bay, Seattle, Arizona. Dude, whoever is running the ball might cook because those run
Sure.
Ds are terrible.
Sure.
And I mean, especially Detroit and Philly to start off. I mean,
Yeah.
I could see Raheem Mostert cook up, and then maybe they just either let Trey Sermon take a little bit more of a load later on, or they trade, Raheem Mostert. Who knows? But I'm leaning more and more to taking a guy like Raheem in the 7th round, or Trey Sermon in the 7th round, if still available. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And just having him there on my bench.
Sure. When are you taking George Kittle in the round or
George
in the
Kittle, dude.
draft?
Well, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Do you, because that is the receiver I picked for this trio, even though I think they've got some great wide receivers too, that we'll touch
Sure.
on. But, do you think George Kittle, when healthy, fully healthy, is the most absolute dominant tight end? Not the best. I'm not, because I think we agree Travis Kelce's the best. I think Waller maybe presents more fantasy value, but just in terms of can go out there week to week and just absolutely shred a team in every way.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I was thinking about that today. Last week we talked about the AFC West, and I have a lot of conviction in drafting Darren Waller and Darren Waller as a player, but it has kind of come up to me that I haven't been considering George Kittle whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's definitely not fair, considering that he's coming off of injury and what we've seen him do in the 2 years previous to that injury, and even what we saw him do last season in 8 games. I mean, he was on pace to have a better year than he had in 2019 last year.
He's a monster, dude.
And he does have that, I don't know the right word, just that savage mentality, that savage presence when he's on the field. And you're absolutely right. That's the guy that when he's lined up, he has ability to have a 40-yard gain or a score every play, and have an absolute monster game every week.
And he blocks really well too.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's a beast at blocking, which I think separates him, because you look at a guy like Waller. I mean, Waller's not terrible, but he's not a great, run blocker. I mean, Travis Kelce, I think he's, improved a lot, but he's definitely a primary pass catcher. But George Kittle does it all. He even runs it sometimes. I mean, I think he is so important to this team. And I think he has gotten undervalued over the past couple of years, just because there are guys like Travis Kelce who are just clearly the number one.
Well, I think in most mock drafts right now, and then in most drafts coming up, you're probably going to be able to get George Kittle at a discount, right? There's definitely going to be leagues out there who recognize the talent, who put him above a Darren Waller. And so you might not, you guys know your leagues better than us, right? But for the most part, he's kind of that name that's just kind of flying under the radar coming off of that injury season. But I look for him to do closer to what he did in 2019 this upcoming year. And it's me calling myself out. I haven't really talked about George Kittle whatsoever, or even considered him in my draft strategies, and he should definitely be considered in everyone's draft strategy.
Because he's like a clear consensus top 3, but nobody's talking about him, and it is kind of ridiculous. And the more I think about it, I think there's a good chance maybe this guy falls in our league to the 4th round, and if he does, I'm taking him
Your
if
mom
he
picked him
falls.
in the first round last year, so
Yeah,
I wouldn't bet on
yeah,
it, man.
yeah, and then came back with Philip Lindsay, I think. So
Yeah, yeah, I was
yeah,
about to say.
you never know. But if this guy falls to your fourth round, I mean, and you look at kind of the alternatives of what you can take. George Kittle could be the tight end one next year,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's something you need to seriously look at when looking at that. Because right after that, then you're getting into the Kyle Pitts, Hawkinson, Mark Andrews type of territory, and that's a lot sketchier than that top three. So you're getting elite value with him for sure.
Well,
But
who's the receiver one on this team? Because I'm pretty scared of these wide receivers from a fantasy
I'm not.
perspective.
I'm not. We'll drop 13 to 24 wide receiver rankings, so keep an eye on that. But Brandon Ayuk is in my top 24. He's ADP 50, wide receiver 22 on the year this year. And I think he is going to be really good, regardless of who's at quarterback. This is a guy who I think took over that team position group at receiver, even though Debo was there. They had some other guys too, like Bourne last year, who's now with the Patriots. But this is a guy who really gets his fantasy value in a multitude of ways. He doesn't just catch passes, he runs a lot of times too. So he does a lot of reverses out of the backfield. He's a really thick guy who can run the ball really well. And at Arizona State, actually, he's your boy, bro. I
That's
don't know why
true.
you're not repping him,
That's
dude.
true.
But this guy, you remember that one play he had against Philadelphia where he hurdled the defender? I mean, he came out into the league and just made a splash, bro.
Yeah.
And this was a guy you could get on the waivers. But I mean, I can talk all about last year, but I think this year, the fact that he's also got the chance to work with Trey Lance, I just think that raises his roof. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I will say, I mean, last year Debo Samuel was like my guy. Like,
Yeah, you
uh,
loved Debo
yeah. Well,
last
I
year.
mean, the
You loved him.
value you could draft him at, I was like, oh yeah. I took him in like every mock draft leading
Mhm.
up to the season, and he was like my primary target in every draft at the end of the draft.
He's
But
always hurt. He's always hurt,
oh yeah,
bro.
yeah. I will say, going into this season, I would definitely select Brandon Ayuk over Debo. But
Hmm.
um, I think once again, it's relatively similar to the running backs in this offense. It's just the way the offense is ran. It's
Yeah.
really hard for there to be a clear cut number one guy. So I'm just a little hesitant on drafting these guys overall at the skill position or different skill positions outside, of course, of the tight end position, right? But I don't disagree with you. I'm just a little hesitant, is all.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but like you're saying, like the running back and the receiver position, it's really hard to get a clear cut one. But you look at this, he played 12 games because he didn't really play a lot in the beginning. He
Sure.
had 96 targets and 60 catches with 5 touchdowns and like 800 yards. I mean, that guy actually was kind of fed a lot of targets, and he really turned up every time he did catch it. So I think if you extrapolate that out to next season, I think we could really see Brandon Ayuk take that next step and be that wide receiver, in his second season to break out. But my last point before we kind of switch over gears and jump over to your team, um, let me ask you this. Who would you rather have, Brandon Ayuk, Chase Claypool, or T. Higgins? Just real briefly, because I think they're going to be in that same mix right there.
That's a pretty tough decision.
Yeah,
uh, right now, I'm a little hesitant on Chase Claypool overall, just due to
injuries.
injuries. Um, my stock on T. Higgins has risen pretty significantly
Yeah, I love him.
because Jamar Chase hasn't figured out how to catch footballs so far this preseason,
Yeah.
which is very alarming. Um, but nonetheless, I would say it's right up there with T. Higgins.
Okay.
If it was, see, earlier in the offseason, right? I mean, I was way higher on Chase Claypool from his value
Yeah.
and where you can draft him. Uh,
He's
I
got the biggest
wasn't
upside, probably.
I wasn't as high on T. Higgins because of Jamar Chase being there. But a lot of things are changing rapidly, and I would probably pick Brandon Ayuk at this point in
Yeah.
time. But I like T. Higgins right now as well. So
Yeah.
I would teeter totter
But
between the
that's why
two.
I threw that trio out there for you,
Yeah,
because that's going to be your kind of set that you're looking at in
yeah,
terms of your draft. But I agree. I think we
yeah,
can both come away and say Brandon Ayuk maybe has the best upside there.
yeah. Well, let's see here. Let's crack down the Seattle Seahawks
Yeah.
offense, as our team as a whole, right? Um, I think, I am as high on the Seahawks as anyone, right? I love this team. Let's just start with our trio, right? And we'll kind of, go with whatever discussion arises. So I've obviously got Russell Wilson as my quarterback, Chris Carson's my running back, and then I'm going with DK Metcalf as my wide receiver here. So Russell Wilson, in my opinion, the most underrated quarterback in the entire NFL. There's a point where we would have some heated debates about me saying that Russell Wilson is the best quarterback in the
Yeah.
NFL. And I would certainly still argue to some degree, or at least make the case that he is the most valuable quarterback to his team. And I think this season it'll really come to light because
Mhm.
this team didn't do anything this offseason
No.
except pay Jamal Adams. And I mean, Jamal Adams is a great safety, but God, did you give up a lot of stock for
Dude,
him?
they bent him over the table. He
And
bent
just
them over
think
the table.
about the defensive backs they've let go in the past couple of years. So,
Yeah.
um, and man, I'm as big of a fan of Pete Carroll as anyone. I think he's a fantastic head coach. Um, but nonetheless, this is a difficult schedule this year. From a
Hmm.
fantasy perspective, this is a ridiculously difficult schedule, right? Russell Wilson's got the hardest strength of schedule from the quarterback position. But I've said this in mock drafts, and I'll stand by this. I think if any quarterback can come out and have a good year against the most difficult strength of schedule from a fantasy perspective, it's Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And I'm not expecting him to really even make it to kind of like that top 10 area overall. But I am expecting him to have a good year, similar to Aaron Rodgers, who has a very difficult schedule
Hmm.
overall. But
Yeah, they're really similar to this year.
he's Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, and
Yeah.
Russ's year on average, your QB 6 last year, and you just look at what he's done year in and year out. I love Russell Wilson. I can't say enough good things about him. He can, he's gonna have, not only the passing threat there, but he can still run the ball as well, as good as, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe anyone in the league, right? I mean, not Lamar's, style, not Kyler Murray, but pretty close. And
Yeah.
he's a lot older than a lot of these other mobile guys too. So I can't say enough good things about Russell Wilson. But you definitely, when you're evaluating quarterbacks from a fantasy perspective, you need to take in consideration that strength of schedule. I mean, through the first half of fantasy last year, this was your number one quarterback. Then on the back end of the year, he fell off completely.
Atrocious.
It's the wrong time to
Yeah.
fall off completely, right? So
Yeah.
and Russell Wilson, who I did not own last year, but the year before I owned.
He lets you down, man. He lets you
Yeah.
down.
The thing with Russ is he can come out and he can have 48 points 2 weeks in a row, and then the next week have 6 points against the Rams. So
Yeah.
you need to not only take into consideration the overall strength of schedule, but also the fact that he's playing the Rams 2 times a year and the 49ers 2 times a year. No knock on the Cards, but they're not really the threat defensively like those other two
JJ
teams
Watt.
are. Sure, J.J. Watt is there, and I think their linebacker corps has stepped up too, which we'll talk about as well later in this podcast. But nonetheless, I wouldn't be scared, I guess is the point I'm trying to make, if Russell
Mhm.
Wilson is your QB1 on your fantasy roster. But uh, you need to kind of tamper expectations. I think he'll be closer to a quarterback like between 10 and 12 at the end of the season. So
I agree.
um, but overall, I love Russell Wilson. I don't think he's going to have a bad year as a football player. I think he's going to maybe struggle in a fantasy perspective. But nonetheless, I think the Seahawks can come out and win all of these games. A lot of these more 50-50 games, I think they have a good enough team to win the games. But the problem is, it's the same problem as last year, and they won the division last year. All of the pressure is on this offense, and all 90% of that pressure is on
Yeah.
Russell Wilson. Um, and it's the same argument I'm going for. He is that valuable to this team and to this organization. You had some weird off-season stuff happen where
Drama for sure.
maybe Russ doesn't want to be here. They bring in a new, I don't even know what his official position is, QB mentor, QB coach. Um, and nonetheless, they didn't go out and change their head coach, which I personally think
But
would
they
have been a
changed
bad
the
move.
OC.
Yeah, and yeah,
Yeah.
it was their OC that changed. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, I think this team is going to be very good overall. But God, this division just makes it 10
It's
times
tough.
more difficult to evaluate. So, nonetheless, at the running back position, I've got Chris Carson, who has a very difficult strength of schedule from a fantasy perspective. So I'm pretty worried about my guy Chris because I like Chris Carson a lot. I had him in fantasy last year, but he was injured, quite a bit, and I have a bad feeling about Chris Carson this year. I have a bad feeling that
Both of us started so high on him, though.
I
I feel like when we
know,
first started doing our
I
mock
know,
drafts, we would both take him like fourth round, and we were like, "Yo, this is your guy." But
yeah,
then we started hearing the murmurs of Rashad Penny, who didn't do that great in preseason. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, there's just like this. Chris Carson is just like not like a. You don't come out of the draft and you're like, "Oh, I got Chris Carson." You know what I mean? But you're still having to take him in the fourth round. So I don't
yeah.
know. I mean. I do like his upside value, though, in terms of getting touchdowns. And I mean, I think you like that, too. He's part of a great offense. But
Sure.
and they gave him money over the past year that, is hopefully to a sign that they're going to feed him. But
Yeah.
he's also had a ton of injuries in his career.
I just got a weird feeling, man. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those years where we're possibly going to see some negative regression.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I just wouldn't go out and make him in fantasy your RB1. That is built into your strategy.
No
If you can get Chris Carson as your RB3, I think he's perfect in that position, right?
Yeah.
If he's your RB2, then you better just have a lot of conviction in this offense as a whole. But it's no knock on Chris Carson. I think he's a fantastic football player. But I've just got one of those. Maybe this is. I mean, a lot of these teams now are just beating the hell out of their running backs. And I just got a bad, murky feeling about Chris Carson at this point in the offseason. Obviously, I've been higher on him a little bit earlier in the offseason. So, nonetheless, let's talk about these receivers, man, because my boy DK Metcalf is the #1 receiver in the league. That's my guy. DK is.
DK.
I love DK, man. I'm all about some DK Metcalf. That's my boy. And I think, once again, very difficult strength of schedule from a fantasy perspective for both DK and Tyler Lockett. 26 overall, most difficult schedule. DK's on average right now your wide receiver number 6, being selected about 18th overall in mock drafts. So I think, once again, if there's any receiver who can overcome a difficult strength of schedule, it's DK Metcalf. I think there's other receivers out there: Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, right? I mean, Calvin Ridley. There's all kinds of guys who are going to play well at the receiver #1 position, even against bad defenses. But nonetheless, you can't start DK Metcalf when Jalen Ramsey is lining up against him, because the Seahawks are smart enough to know that DK is a decoy in those circumstances, right? We talked about this a little bit in our wide receiver ranking video, right? And he played very poorly against the Rams last year. Yeah. And like I said, I think part of that is truly they just know that he can take Jalen Ramsey out of the game, and then you don't have to worry about Jalen Ramsey, right?
And you got Tyler Lockett to go to.
Sure. And I think Tyler Lockett is a phenomenal receiver, and I think a great fantasy value.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about him because I'm super high on him. They paid him like a #1 wide receiver, yo.
Yeah. Well, and I think I don't know if there's anything you want to touch on about DK Metcalf, because if you've been watching our mock draft, keeping up with this channel, like you guys know, I don't have enough good things to say about DK, and I think he's a lethal wide receiver #1. But yeah, I'll let you go ahead and get in any notes as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think DK Metcalf is a beast too. I mean, and he's probably got some of the best upside out of any player in all of football at wide receiver. But he is, as much as anybody, kind of tempered because they have Tyler Lockett. And I think, as much as a chemistry as Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf have, I think Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson have better chemistry.
Sure.
And apparently, I've been kind of hammering away over some of these videos that word out of camp is they're focusing on tempo, getting quick passes out so that Russell doesn't get smashed, because like you said, they didn't do much in the offseason in terms of bringing anybody in. So this O-line's just as shitty as it has been, but you got DK going over the top, doing these big ass plays, but Tyler Lockett is made for those slot plays and all of the quick stuff. So I think Tyler Lockett, I mean, the value you're getting this guy at, ADP 54, wide receiver 21, he's in both of our wide receiver rankings for 13 to 24. And we're going to talk about him at length for sure, but I love where you can get Lockett. I mean,
Yeah.
I love it. I would be so happy to get him next year. And so I had him last year where he had like, the crazy game. And then like, for multiple games, like he would have like 5 points. Right. So I dealt with that frustration, but I just, if I'm buying a piece of this offense, I am much happier waiting and taking Lockett than reaching for DK because there's so many good players where you're getting DK. And I get why you like him and I get why you reach for him. And in your rankings, you have him over some really good receivers.
He's got cool hair too.
He's got badass hair. He's got really badass hair. His hair is stronger than me. So, this guy's built, man. But you look at that too. You got Lockett, you got DK, but then another guy that I know you want to talk about, Gerald Everett, coming over from a division rival in the Rams. This guy is super good, super fast, and they have not really had a solid tight end in a while, but this could be him. This could be the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with Tyler Lockett, right? You're looking at about 20 more receptions than DK Metcalf last year, and the same amount of scores, about 300 less receiving yards, right? But nonetheless, I think you're absolutely right. There's a great value there and a very similar value. Tyler Lockett's your wide receiver number 9 last year in fantasy. But you also touched on a great point that in week 3, he was fantasy receiver number 1. Week 4, he was fantasy receiver 72. Week 5, 53. Week 6 by week, right? Week 7, fantasy receiver number 1 on the week again. And then for the rest of the year, number 58, 64, 32, 11, which is good. Then number 73, number 47, number 47, number 66, and number 60 before finishing the season as wide receiver number 7 on the week. So a lot of that, wide receiver 9 value came in week 3 and week 7. So I think when I start to evaluate that makes me a little hesitant overall.
Oh, yeah, and I get that.
But it's no knock, and I think you're absolutely right. And you make a very fair argument that there's more value in waiting for a guy like Tyler Lockett, aka Hot Lockett, right? I think it's a great argument, and I think both DK and Tyler Lockett are going to come out and have great years, even against.
I think they both are. They're both going to be really good.
Schedule, yeah. And I like the note that Russ and Tyler Lockett have amazing chemistry, right? But you're also absolutely right. Gerald Everett is my guy, one of my guys to have an absolute breakout year. He's not competing for targets with Tyler Higbee. Russell Wilson loves the tight end position. He's come out the last year or two and made like 3 or 4 guys look like absolute stars at the tight end position.
Will Disley, Hollister, dude, he had some randos.
Greg Olsen was there.
past like 50 years old.
Yeah. And I think Gerald Everett is a great tight end, and I think this is a year where he can absolutely come out and have a breakout year. So, and outside of that, the only other guy really that we need to talk about is Rashad Penny, who I think we've touched on actually enough already as is. It's just like, is this the year that Rashad Penny can come in and take over that RB1 position? And if he doesn't, at the very least, is he going to be a heavily utilized RB, right? So I think it's definitely interesting to kind of evaluate that. But the other note offensively is like, who is this offensive line? Like, why can the Seahawks not go out and protect Russ? It's just very frustrating, and I think
it's a lack of good management at the end of the day.
Sure. And from a defensive standpoint for this team, it's like this defense is pretty dicey. Like, not really sure what to say, but at the end of the day, you've got Bobby Wagner and now Jamal Adams as like your franchise guys to lead this defense, and I think that could be enough. But once again, the overall problem with this team is that all the pressure's on the offense, and you can give up a lot of points, and Russ can lead this offense to match those points, but how long can they keep that up, and how long can they have that much pressure on Russell Wilson and this offense as a whole?
Yeah, I think, you talk about this defense and you look at this roster top down on defense, it's pretty thin as well. So, injuries are a part of the game, especially with an extra game on the schedule. This defense could get shaky real quick. And if you're looking at the offensive output here, that might be good for Russell Wilson because that might lead to more touchdowns. But yeah, man, the big walkaway here is, what the hell is general managers doing in terms of building the team around Russ, and what a crazy schedule in terms of how difficult it is.
Tell you one thing, the Jamal Adams and Madden, absolute monster.
Beast.
All
Yeah,
that
don't run
matters.
near him. Don't run near him. He'll knock your
Automatic
block
fumble.
out. Yeah,
Let's talk
yeah.
about another team with a little bit of a shaky defense, as well as a team that has a lot of pressure at the
Mhm.
quarterback position, and that of the Arizona Cardinals. Shout out to our boy Tyler, his home
Yeah,
team.
T-Pain. He's
Yeah,
very happy about Kyler Murray,
oh
dude,
yeah.
which I don't blame him. Yeah.
So yeah, break down this Cardinals team, man. Let's
Yeah,
get
man.
into it.
So I think for starters, you touched on this defense. It was pretty shaky last year, but I think they went out and they did what they had to do. I mean, they brought in some really good guys. You got JJ Watt, obviously the headliner. He's a little bit past his prime, you know what I mean? But still a badass dude. And you pair him with Chandler Jones. I mean, that is a pretty lethal D line, no matter
Yeah,
how you want to cut it.
and the veteran presence goes a long
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
So
he's a great locker room dude. I think he's going to be really
yeah,
good for this team. But then you look at their linebackers, super quick guy. I mean, you got Isaiah Simmons, who was basically running like a cornerback out there. He can do so many different things. Isaiah Simmons is an exciting player, and I think he's going to be great for this team going long term. But I think he's also going to take a step in his career because last year he started off slow and then really hit his stride. So I'm looking for Isaiah to really make a big play next year. But Buda Baker, I mean, it all starts and stops with him. This guy is an absolute dog. In my opinion, maybe the best playmaker on defense right now. He can do anything and everything. The only guy who can stop him is DK Metcalf on those
yeah.
pick sixes, dude. Because I mean, that was a crazy play when DK tracked him down. But I mean, Buda Baker, badass, dude. That's a bottom line. But
And not to cut you off, but yeah, I mean, I just called this a shaky defense, and now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, man, this defense could actually be kind of for real because
elite, yeah.
and not to hop in on your team, but I think Zaven Collins is going to be a phenomenal rookie linebacker, and pairing him with Isaiah Simmons, and then you still have, I mean, Chandler Jones apparently wants out or wants a new
I
contract.
really hope he doesn't because
But he's amazing.
I think he was I think he was upset that DeAndre got paid before he did. But I mean, dude, suck it up because you guys could really make a Super Bowl run. Definitely beat the 8.5 over, which we'll talk about later. But let's just jump into this offense because it is probably one of the best offenses in all of football next year. I had Kyler Murray last year. He's obviously going to be the quarterback of this trio. I had him last year.
Colt McCoy?
No, not Colt McCoy, but what a hell of a backup, dude. If the Giants kept him in last year, they would have made the freaking playoffs, man.
Yeah.
But no reason to talk about Colt McCoy for more than 30 seconds. But, dude, Kyler Murray, so ADP 48, QB3. In my opinion, outside of Mahomes, I think Kyler Murray is I think he is the guy to get. I like him more than Josh Allen. I like him more than Lamar Jackson. He is a beast.
I do have a question here to cut you off with, okay?
Yeah.
Do you think, we talk about sometimes fantasy football rankings come out and then a lot of different sources of rankings put a unanimous person in the same spot across rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Patrick Mahomes being the number one quarterback across almost all fantasy rankings is kind of a product of that? And do you think that someone like Kyler Murray should be considered to be the number one quarterback across all fantasy rankings? Because I certainly think that as good as Patrick Mahomes is, you're going to see a lot of people reach for Patrick Mahomes, and for good reason.
But not Kyler necessarily.
But not a guy like Kyler Murray. So, and I'm like, man, Kyler, I don't want to take away from your conversation, but
actually, that's a really good comment because I think that is 100% true. I think that is across all positions. People kind of just label as number one guys. Like we agree that CMC is probably running back one, but it's not even a conversation fantasy experts have. And at quarterback, it is actually a bigger question because while Patrick Mahomes is absolutely dominant every week, I think Kyler Murray's ability to run and elite arm, one of the best in the league. I think the pairing of those two actually do week to week give you more of a fantasy upside because Mahomes doesn't have the rushing upside, even though he can run. And yes, he can pass and make some crazy plays, but they also get up on people pretty quick and then just kind of resort to kind of slowing the game down and ending it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Kyler Murray historically, like throughout his career over the past like year or so, has been in shootouts towards the end of the game a little bit more than the Chiefs. So
Sure.
I think that's a good point. I mean, like if you're looking at that, you can get Kyler Murray later in your draft, and there's just as good of an argument for him being the QB1 next season.
I mean, he was QB2 on the season last year on average.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a fantastic year, man. I really do.
I
He
see
kind,
positive regression happening to him
yeah,
too. I don't see him going down.
he kind of fell off towards the end of the season last year. He
He
had
was hurt.
a lot
Yeah,
of.
it was
That's
that.
true. That's true.
Yeah, he was hurt. He had that shoulder injury, and it was a
Yeah,
bitch as a fantasy owner, man. I was so mad about that, dude. I was
yeah,
like, come on, dude. But
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think at the end of the day, too, I mean, when you're looking at this and you're looking at this offense, I think that Cliff Kingsbury, while he is a really shitty coach, like he does always want to pass the ball or always have it in Kyler's hands, like nonstop spread it out. And that also leads to DeAndre Hopkins, who is my wide receiver pick here. I think DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, I put him in my top 5. I think this guy is going to come out and just be a badass again. We just talked him in that wide receiver rankings 1 through 12. This is a guy who week to week is Kyler Murray's number 1 and number 2 read almost. I mean, it's just like every play almost seems to go to him. A lot of people didn't think that when DeAndre got traded from the Texans that he was going to be just as good, but
Sure.
it's very clear that Cliff and this offense with Arizona has not tried to spread the ball out to everybody. They have still recognized the fact that DeAndre is one of the best receivers in the league, and they're going to feed it to him as such.
Absolutely, as they should. But
Yeah.
I do want to touch I actually really like the addition of AJ Green to this offense because
Yeah. He's old boy, though. He's an
he's
old
old.
boy.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of like they looked at they were like, okay, Larry Fitzgerald might play this year. D Hop is a true veteran at this point. Let's get AJ Green and add him.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah.
I do. I feel like a lot of people are just going out and like shitting on that addition because he is old, but I think that it's going to add something positive to this offense overall. And Christian Kirk is like this receiver
He's so good, dude.
but he just like he
I
needs.
love him.
I think the addition of AJ Green will help a guy like Christian Kirk, right? Because I think them knowing that Fitzgerald, because we don't know if Fitz is going to play at all this year, and
I hope he does.
if he does, he's not going to be with the Cardinals. Right?
No.
Like he's been moved on from that, right? But we saw Christian Kirk play better when Larry was on the field, right? And that's an easy thing to say for probably any receiver, right? Because Larry Fitzgerald is one of the best receivers of all time, right? But nonetheless, I like the addition of AJ Green, and I think it's not something to sneeze at necessarily. Like I don't expect AJ Green to have like more than 500 receiving yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns, and he'll probably prove me wrong because I came out and said it right. But at the same time, I just think it's a fair addition to this offense, I guess. And just hear a lot of people like absolutely shitting on that addition, but I think it'll have a positive impact, and it'll give Kyler Murray another veteran to target when he's in those situations where he can't, where DeAndre
He
Hopkins
can't force feed it to DeAndre.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Can't just chuck it up deep like he did against the Bills. But before we get into, I think like the biggest debate about Arizona and their offense, just want to say another fantasy sleeper to keep your eyes on is Rondale Moore, the rookie wide receiver they got from Purdue. I mean, this guy is really, really good, really talented. He's been doing good in practice as well.
Is he also 35 years old?
He's not 35. Yeah, he's not 35. So that's a plus for this guy because they have got some old guys. I mean, dude, imagine if you had J.J. Watt, DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, A.J. Green, all these guys in their prime. I mean, this
just
is
like a Madden roster, you know?
It's a Madden roster from like 2004. Like, I mean, just total badasses. But no, I mean, I think the real debate here, I think you would agree here, who are you taking at running back between Chase Edmonds and James Conner? I mean, it's tough because neither of these guys made our top 24 in terms of running back rankings. I think Chase Edmonds probably has the best chance to make like a top 24 just because he does have a little bit more consistency with this offense. He holds a little bit more PPR value, but I don't know if he can do it for a full season. And that's the same argument with James Conner.
I don't like either of these guys.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to draft either of them.
People are taking Chase Edmonds, man.
Well, I think the misconception here is that they think Arizona Cardinals and they think of the firepower at offense, but the person leading that and the person getting a majority of the rushing yards and rushing touchdowns is Kyler Murray, right?
Mhm.
Uh, he is going to eat in. I mean, similar to what we see with the running backs in Baltimore, right?
And the
Kyle,
Bills.
sure, Kyler Murray is going to. I mean, Chase Edmonds and James Conner are going to do everything they need to do within this offense, and they're both going to have good years. But from a
Mhm.
fantasy perspective, there's going to be weeks where you're going to be happy that you drafted them. There's probably going to be just as many weeks where you're going to be like, why the hell did I go out and draft this guy? Um,
Especially a guy like James Conner,
yeah,
because he's had a lot of injury issues.
but in a PPR scoring format, you definitely need to consider Chase Edmonds. I mean, if the price is right, yeah, go out and get him for. I mean, we saw him have over 400 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns from a receiving standpoint, and 53 receptions. So those are great PPR numbers, and but only 1 rushing touchdown last year. And I think James Conner is going to be that kind of goal line, third
Red zone
down
back, yeah.
back. Yeah. But keep in mind, man, it's no knock on James Conner, who I'm a fan of. He's never had it over 1,000 rushing yards. He's never even
Yeah.
had 1,000 rushing
And it
yards.
won't be this year either that he
No,
has
no,
that.
no. And it's
But
been. Go,
let me ask you, yeah,
yeah,
because I think this is similar to that conversation about Brandon Ayuk and everything. Like,
sure.
who would you rather have here? Chase Edmonds, Damian Harris, or Raheem Mostert?
Oh man.
Because I mean, for me,
Well,
it's like I think I'm going to take Chase Edmonds just because he's part of a great offense and
that's my
might
thought too.
get that PPR value.
That's my
And
thought too. Yeah.
so I think if you're looking at that, and especially if you are a wide receiver heavy type of team, I mean, you can get a guy like a Chase Edmonds, and he's going to give you really
Yeah.
good weeks. He's going to give you good ceiling play every single game.
Well, like I said, if the price is right, then yeah, I think he is worth drafting. But you kind of have to know what you're drafting him for, right?
Yeah.
If you go wide receiver heavy and you have a glaring hole at the running back position and you're playing a PPR league, then
Mhm.
yeah, then he's a good selection at that point. But do I see him having an elite year? No, because Kyler Murray is their quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's like my same argument for not drafting J.K. Dobbins, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like Yahoo Fantasy's got J.K. Dobbins projected at over 1,400 rushing yards. And I'm like, I don't think that's even possible
Yeah.
anymore.
How is he going to get that many carries?
Yeah,
Yeah. Like,
yeah. And I'm like, I it's no knock on Chase Edmonds or James Conner, right? But they're going to provide the service that they're there for, right? And that's not having a 1,000-yard rushing season
mhm.
or a crazy season from the receiving standpoint, but they're both going to have good years in that offense. And I
Well, let
think,
me cut you off because I want to talk about somebody who I am excited about.
oh God,
Daryl Henderson
you want
on
to
the
get to the
Los Angeles
Rams?
Rams, baby. Man, let's talk
Daryl
about Daryl
D
Henderson.
Tendies, D
Dude, I
Tendy.
cannot wait for me to freaking draft him in the second round and then he's like injured week 1. I just can't
Uh,
wait for it. I can't wait.
we need to figure out which podcast it was when you tried to say Daryl Henderson and like.
Yeah, it was like an ultimate brain freeze. I was like, damn.
So,
Yeah, it was really
yeah,
bad.
let's break down the Rams, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, you got the
So
best team here.
yeah, in my opinion, this is the best team in the division, like top to bottom. When you look at the roster, when you look at the coaching staff, when you look at the offense, I think this is the most complete roster. I think this is the team that has the best chance to win the division, especially since they have shown that they can shut down that Seattle offense. I think they're more
Mhm.
complete than the 49ers, and I think that they're more complete as well in comparison to the Arizona Cardinals. So let's start with the offense. My trio, I've got Matthew Staff Infection,
Yeah,
our
baby.
boy D Tendies, Daryl Henderson, and I'm rolling with Cooper Cup, man. I am right here.
Yeah,
But
I like him.
no knock on Robert Woods. Like
They're like the
I think
same
it's
player.
yeah, exactly. I think it's your
They're
pick.
like the same player. Yeah.
Whoever you're feeling for the day. Right now, I'm feeling Cooper Cup. Tomorrow, it might be Robert Woods. Right. So let's talk for a minute, though. Let's talk about Matthew Stafford and the addition
Yeah.
of Matthew Stafford to this offense and to this team. I mean, him and Sean McVay just look like they're like longtime
Chilling in
boys.
Cabo. Yeah,
Yeah, like
chilling in
they
Cabo,
go on
apparently. No tampering
vacation.
there for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about Matt Stafford for a minute though, because like when you look at Matthew Stafford's stats, Uh, if he had stayed in Detroit for the rest of his career, he's still a Hall of Famer. You can still debate he's a Hall of
Yeah,
Famer.
you can debate it, but man, that he would have never had really any winning to show
No,
for it.
no, no, absolutely
Yeah,
not. But I don't think it's his fault. And I think,
no,
uh, dude, he has had, I mean, last season a QB rating of 96.3. The season before that, a QB rating of 106. Granted, he played in only 8 games. That was the year he was hurt.
hmm
But year before that, 89.9. Year before that, 99.3. Then 93.3, 97. I mean, he is an exceptional quarterback. He's very accurate. He can throw the deep ball. He can put up a lot of passing yards. He can put up a lot of touchdowns. And he keeps the interceptions to a minimum, right? I love Matthew Stafford. I'm happy that he's getting the chance to uh, better himself and play for a winning organization, a
a
team that's
great,
yeah,
great
team
coach too.
that's been to a Super Bowl in the past couple of years. An amazing coach, amazing offensive mind, and that of Sean McVay. But with all that said, and with all that glory, I'm not expecting a lights out year from Matthew
Okay,
Stafford. I'm not expecting him to have. I mean, there. I think he stays the quarterback that he is. He throws for between 4,000 and 4,500 passing yards, and he has somewhere around 30 touchdowns and like 8 to 10 interceptions. Right. Um, I don't think he's gonna.
so I got to jump in here, man,
Sure.
because I mean, I think there's a good argument that like Matt Stafford isn't comparable. Is kind of like a grittier, more talented Matt Ryan. Their numbers are relatively similar, but it's like Matt Stafford's been doing it with Detroit and
Sure.
really had nobody to go to outside of when he had Megatron. But now you're finally putting Matt Stafford in, like you were saying, like the ideal position.
Yeah.
Um, when you look at him, and we're going to do our quarterback rankings, and this is one of the guys I've had the hardest time placing because for a lot of people, he's sitting outside the top 12. But
Sure.
at the same time, people are saying, could this be the league's MVP next year? So it's curious. Like, I want to get your input on that. Like, is he a top 10, top 12 guy for you? I don't know if we would take him over a guy like Ryan Tannehill, but this is a guy who could easily be like a top 8 quarterback next year.
He's like right there at QB 11, QB 12 for myself right now.
Yeah.
I would take him over Jalen Hurts. I would take him over a lot of guys like Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow.
hmm
Um, I like I said, I think he's going to have a good year. I just don't think he's going to come out and throw for over 5,000 passing yards and 40 touchdowns like some people are saying. But no, I think it's fair to rank him around that QB 11, QB
Well,
12.
and I think the loss of Cam Akers, I mean, obviously we both like Daryl Henderson, but the loss of Cam Akers, I think, is going to shift this team's focus to like even more on the passing side. Sean McVay, if he could, he would pass it every play. But I think now that they lost Cam Akers, who is way more of a bell cow than Daryl Henderson, given his injury history, I
Yeah.
think we could see a lot more focus on the passing. And he's got so many weapons to give it to. Shit, he's got Tutu Atwell, who I love. He's like 130 pounds, but the guy can run like lightning. He's got Desean Jackson. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
lot of weapons, dude. A lot of
Uh,
weapons on the scene.
and I mean, this is still your QB 15 on average last year. So
Yeah.
you take the fact that he's with a better offense, he's with a better offensive coach, he's with a team that's not cursed. And I think that you have all the reason to believe in Matthew Stafford this year. So, but bringing up that of Cam Akers, obviously we're both fans of Daryl Henderson, but that's just kind of become a running
Sucks that Cam
gag on this
Akers went down
channel.
now.
It does suck
Yeah.
that Cam Akers went down. I was really excited to see what he
hmm
would do this upcoming year, having him on my team last year in that big stretch towards the end of the fantasy season last year, right? But let's actually talk about Daryl Henderson, fanboys aside, because this is a guy who's been in this offense for 2 years, right? Rookie season, barely saw any action, right? Last year, 138 attempts for 624 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. Average
Decent.
4.5 yards per carry. Yeah, pretty good numbers, right? So if you're confident in this offense, then um, at the very least, this is going to be a very serviceable goal
hmm
line type of guy who's going to get. I mean, this is a big back who's going to get those red zone
Very
touches.
fast. Very
Yeah,
fast.
big back who's fast, absolutely. And I'm not fully confident in this being my RB1, but like if you come out and you're going RB light and you're going out and you're getting like Travis Kelsey, Patrick Mahomes, Calvin Ridley,
Stephon Diggs, yeah.
right, and then you're looking for a weaker position at the running back position, and this is your RB1, you might get really lucky. Is kind of the way that I view Daryl Henderson. Like, I do think as long as he remains the RB1 in that offense, that this offense is going to be good enough that he's just naturally going to put up around 1,000 rushing yards and around 8 rushing touchdowns, right? That's kind of where I've got him. But
I would love to have this guy as like an RB3. Like if I could get this guy as an RB3, I think he does give you the chance to have like an unbeatable type of backfield type of lineup there. Because if you can churn out 3 RB1s, it's disgusting.
Absolutely. And I'll put it this way, right? When Cam Akers was not injured, he was like the RB11, RB10, depending on what rankings you're looking at. And now you've got Daryl Henderson sliding all the way to like RB30, right? Like pretty far down. And that just depends on what ranking you're looking at. There are some rankings where he's far closer to like number 15 overall, right? But nonetheless, just think about that, right? You had Cam Akers so far up, and then you've got Daryl Henderson all the way down. So
Cam Akers, people were in love with him. They were taking him in the top 10.
Sure, as good as Cam Akers has shown he is, right, a lot of that still came from conviction in this offense as a whole.
Yeah.
So if you still have conviction in this offense, then I think there's good reason to go out and target Daryl Henderson from a fantasy perspective.
And dude, I think it's important too that, I mean, obviously we expressed the concerns about injuries. We've expressed the concerns about just like lack of like really doing it in the past for Henderson. But the Rams have been pretty outspoken that Henderson's going to be a really big focal point about this team next year. And that he's been doing really well in practice. Like he's been doing it at all levels. He's been a good pass catcher too. And Stafford has gone to the running back and pass. So this is a guy that I am high on, and I was high on in my rankings. So I would encourage you all to take a look at our running back rankings video, 13 to 24, and kind of just listen to what we break him down as, because this is a guy who can really separate your team, and you can get him later in drafts.
Don't sleep on D. Hendy, bro.
Hey, also, don't sleep on Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods.
So who are you taking with these receivers? Because statistically, from a
I think it's been Robert Woods, man.
I was about to say, from a PPR standpoint, Robert Woods is the better receiver. From, 2 seasons ago, they both had much better years in terms of touchdowns, right? 2019, Cooper Kupp had 10 touchdowns. Or excuse me, I'm a little off. Never mind.
Robert
2 years
Woods
ago,
switched.
Well, 2 years ago, Cooper Kupp did have 10 touchdowns. 2 years ago, Robert Woods only had 2 touchdowns. But 2018, 2020, Robert Woods had 6 touchdowns, right? So, but really, these guys aren't getting their value from touchdowns. They're getting their value from the amount of targets they're going to garner and their overall receptions and receiving yards. With in the last 2 years, both of them have had at least 90 receptions overall. So, how much does Matthew Stafford amplify those numbers? And who would you pick, right? If they're both sitting there and you need a receiver 1 or a receiver 2 and they're both available, do you just flip a coin? Because that's kind of where I'm at right now.
It really is. It really is like that. And it's like this offense is so similar to the Buccaneers at the receiving core, because it's like if you look at a lot of people's rankings, you'll see like both of those guys always right next to each other. Like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans will be right next to each other. And then same thing with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. I mean, it's just like you can't really decipher between the two. And it's even harder with the Rams because Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods kind of do the same thing. You know, historically, I feel like Cooper Kupp was more of the red zone threat. Him and Jared Goff had this like crazy bond, crazy relationship since their rookie years, and they always like would connect in the end zone. But then it shifted. I mean, like you said, Robert Woods, you know, had more touchdowns last year, and I honestly think I would go with Robert Woods because look, Bobby Trees, he gets kind of hated on like in drafts. I mean, you can get this guy deep value like often all the time because people just don't recognize him as being as good as he is. But at the same time, too, don't you kind of feel like Cooper Kupp's low-key kind of fallen off a past couple of years and maybe seen a little bit more injuries? I mean, I think Matt Stafford like raises the roof on these guys, but I don't know about how much because the offense is still structured in a way that it's not like they're launching deep passes. Like it's a levels type of offense that just
Sure.
kind of breaks down each level and hits its targets and spreads it out. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Jared Goff did a good job at hitting these two and making them do really well.
I do think that they're going to have better years with Matthew Stafford at the quarterback position, but
Marginal though.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
That's the point I'm
yeah.
getting at. Is I think it's marginal, but I think it's certainly okay. Where you can get these guys from a fantasy perspective, if either of these guys is your wide receiver two, you have a very good wide receiver two to rely on throughout the season. And the interesting thing, the interesting addition to this offense is Desean Jackson.
Yeah.
I think it's just interesting. Like I don't
Don't
like
take him, man.
no
Just
no no
because
no no.
this guy he plays like one game a season, he has like 50 points, and then he's
The
injured the
only
rest of the year.
the only leagues I'm considering him in is my 20
The deep
man league.
leagues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one last note on this offense is that of Tyler Higbee, who
The most important note, dude. Most
yeah,
important note.
I mean right now kind of ranked as like tight end number 15, 10 to 15, depending on what rankings you're looking at, right? I like Tyler Higbee a lot. I'm
I love
happy
him.
that Gerald Everett is out of this offense to not
Hmm.
take away a lot of those targets. Um, but how I guess you're a lot higher on Tyler Higbee because I like Tyler Higbee. I'm okay with him being my tight end one, but there are other tight ends who I put above Tyler Higbee right now.
Yeah.
And even like Robert Tonyan and Mike Gesicki, I still have them higher than I have Tyler Higbee. But
Look
once
at
again,
Higbee right after those guys.
yeah, sure. No,
And
I don't
you can get
disagree.
him you can get him deep though, and I think that's the reason I like him because
Yeah,
my strategy on the tight end is it's like if you don't get one of those elite guys, and then you start looking at okay, Tanyan or Gasecki, but after that, it's like Higbee, you are getting a really good player who had some weeks, some like league winning weeks. I mean, where he would ball out,
yeah.
and then he was also now you're pairing him with one of the best offenses in the league with Matt Stafford. I mean, I don't know. I just think now you're finally also seeing him, like you were saying, untapped as the tight end one with little competition. So
Yeah,
this could be his breakout season.
I completely agree. So
Yeah.
it's not a knock on Tyler Higbee, but for myself personally, I've got some guys a little bit higher than him, but certainly a great value at the tight end position. And
Mhm.
like you said, if you're not going tight end early, this is certainly a guy to start targeting. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't reach for him, I guess is my point. I've seen some mock drafts and some debate where people are going out and they're really, really, really in love with Tyler Higbee. I would just maybe tamper it down slightly, I
Yeah.
guess.
I'm not reaching for any tight end in that tier, to be honest, but I do think if I can come out of the draft and have a guy like Tyler Higbee, if I'm not targeting a guy in that George Kittle tier, I'm
Sure,
very happy. I'm
sure.
very happy.
One last note from a fantasy perspective. This fucking Los Angeles Rams defense,
It's
from a
disgusting.
fantasy perspective last year, first in the category of quarterbacks, right? Fifth
Mhm.
against the category of running backs, first against the category of wide receivers, and ninth against the category of tight ends. And depending on it depends because a lot of leagues do different defensive points, but on average, this is your number one defense from a fantasy perspective
Yeah.
last year. Who I got off the waiver wire last year, who most people got off the waiver wire last year. This defense is going to be very good this year. And
Mhm.
there are rankings out there that have this team ranked like between 5 and 7, and I don't understand it. They did lose a couple guys to free agency and some trades and things, but at the end of the day, this defense is led by Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. No
And
matter
Darius Williams is one of the better young
sure,
corners in the league.
there's a lot of other really good football players on this defense, right? But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, if you are lining up against this defense, you have to worry about Aaron Donald being in your face every play, and every throw you make, you need to worry about where Jalen Ramsey is, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if
He
there's
shuts off half the field.
yeah, I don't know if there's a more elite combination from a defensive perspective in the league. And yeah, I'm going out. This is, I mean, you might have to pay a pretty penny for this team in fantasy, and
Mhm.
I don't think either of us like going out and reaching for a defense. But at a certain point, When you're not seeing a lot of value on the board and this defense is still available, because you're going to see leagues where the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Washington football team, some of these other defenses, I mean, the San Francisco 49ers, the Ravens,
Yeah.
are going to be drafted before the Rams. I mean, the Buccaneers, there are teams out there being selected way before the Rams. And I'm telling you, man, don't sleep on this defense from a
Yeah.
fantasy perspective or from a real life perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's really kind of the final note there. Is just that this defense is going to put the Rams in a situation of being one of the top 4 best teams in the NFL next year. And I think that's the main carry away is that, when just looking at this division, it's got a lot of great talent, a lot of great offensive weapons, but man, it's got some beast defenses led by the Rams and then the 49ers right there too. So, but with that said, I think this is a great carry way into the over-under segment of the week.
Yep.
So, at the top, I don't know if you want to kind of get it started with the Los Angeles Rams, who are at the top of these guys with 10.5 being the over-under for them. What are you taking?
Oh man, I'm gonna take the over,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of 50-50 games,
That's the problem.
and this is like the most difficult division to call these over unders on, hands
Mhm.
down in my opinion. But I'll take the over with the Rams, although I'm not taking it by a whole lot. I think the ceiling is 12 to 13 games, and I think the floor is like 10 games, right? Um, a lot of 50-50 games, but they're going to have a stretch. I mean, they come out and it's pretty difficult. They play Chicago
Yeah.
week 1. I think they can win that game. But then they've got Indy, they've got Tampa Bay, they've got Arizona and Seattle. And anytime they're playing a divisional opponent, it's a coin flip. I think they're the
Best
most
games ever,
complete.
dude. There's NFC West division games.
Oh, yeah. And then you've got this stretch of New York, Detroit, Houston. I think they win all 3 of those games. But then you go back and you've got Tennessee, San Fran, Green Bay. Jacksonville is definitely a very winnable game. But then you got Arizona, Seattle, Minnesota, Baltimore, and San Francisco. Like,
I'm taking the under on these guys
okay.
next year. And not by a lot, but I mean, 10.5 is a lot of games. When you look at this schedule and you just look at the competition of those 50-50 matchups,
Sure.
I think you can make a good case for it.
Yeah. I think they win the division. I'll go ahead and say that. I do.
Really?
Which brings us to the Rams. Or excuse me, we're talking about the Rams. It brings us to the Seahawks, who are also at 10.5 wins. I've got them.
The Niners.
Okay.
Niners are at 10.5. The Seahawks are at 10. Slightly under.
Oh gosh, I'm all over the place. You're right.
Yeah,
dude. I don't know. We might as well just put them all out there, right? Cardinals are at 8.5, Seahawks at 10, Niners at 10.5, and Rams at 10.5, right? But really, this entire discussion, it all goes into each other.
It interlaps, yeah.
More than any other division, right? I've got the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are at perfect level, right at 10
I think
wins.
I'm taking them under.
Yeah. 9, yeah, I don't blame you, right? 8 or 9 wins, I can certainly see that as well. I'm not as sold on the 49ers as a lot of people are at 10.5 plus wins.
I love the Niners. I don't
dislike them. I don't know, man.
You like them when you love them, brother.
It's just such a hard division to call, man. I will say this. When you're looking at the schedules, I think the 49ers have probably the most winnable schedule. They play some easier teams, but
Cincinnati, Atlanta, Houston,
that week
Jacksonville
game, the Rams and the Niners is going to be.
It's going to be a heavyweight dogfight.
And then on the flip side, you've got Seattle and Arizona in week 18, which is always fun. But yeah, man, I'm really struggling with this division, man.
Yeah, I mean, just a real quick cap of what I'm taking over underwise. I got the Cardinals at over, Seahawks at under, 49ers at over, and Rams at under. Okay, so I got the Seahawks going under 10 wins, and a large majority of that is just because I feel like the only reason they're even getting 10 is based off of historicals and the fact that they have Russell Wilson. Let's not get it twisted, They have a really hard schedule, and this is a shitty team in comparison to what they've been in the past, and also a lot of drama, a lot of off-the-field issues. I think it bleeds into their on-the-field performance. So I'm taking the under. And then we look at the Cardinals, though, man. 8.5, and we just talked about how good this defense is and how loaded this offense is. And I mean, if Kyler Murray stayed healthy, I think they would have been a better team last year. I'm taking the over on these guys. I think they can do it this year. I think they can make that step and really move up in this division.
That's probably the best team to take the over on and the most
Yeah,
logical one. Dude, I don't
because
even know what to do here. I think all these teams can make the playoffs. I don't think it matters how many games they win.
in betting odds, I would say that like a lot of these are stayaways. Other
Sure.
than the Cardinals, I think the Cardinals does present some pretty good value in terms of a bet because
Yeah.
they are pretty low in terms of an over under. I mean, 8.5. I definitely see this team having enough in them to get that. I mean, yeah, they've got to go through those 6 games of division battles, but outside of that, I mean, they can win those games with any other team in the NFL. I mean, they're that good, and
Yeah.
Kyler is one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
All of these teams play the Indianapolis Colts this year.
Yeah, we're gonna get our asses chewed out by a couple of these guys. I'll
Hey,
tell you
I'm
that
not
right now.
sleeping on the Colts defense right now, but yeah, I certainly think I don't want to disagree with your take on the Seahawks winning less than 10 games. I think that can definitely happen. I think I'm going to
Mhm.
go back and forth on this division all year long. Um, Except I do firmly believe, all I can say for sure is that I believe the Rams will win this division. Um, but nonetheless, I'm not going to be surprised if at least 3 of these teams go to the playoffs, and I hope they do. I think all these teams are playoff worthy, and
Bigger question:
yeah,
do you think one of the teams to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl will be from this division? Because I think there's a
tough.
really good chance it's the Niners or the Rams here.
I think there's a very good chance, but I think the only 2 teams they're going to have to go through are the Packers and the Buccaneers,
Tampa Bay
right?
Buccaneers, yeah.
And Tampa Bay's defense, I mean, that team looks maybe better than they did last year just because they've had more
Mhm.
time with one
They do
another,
look
right?
really good, which
Uh,
scares me. Yeah, they look
it's
good.
it's tough to call, man. I will say if it's not the Packers or the Bucks, it's definitely one of these teams,
Yeah,
hands down. But the road to get to the playoffs is very difficult, and it's very difficult primarily based off of this division as a whole. Um, but I think overall the NFC is a little bit weaker than the AFC is right now. Um, and I think that gives at least 3 of these teams an opportunity to make the playoffs.
hey, final note too. Trey Lance up next. Trey
Hey man,
Lance is up
I
next,
will
yo.
say I think there could be a dramatic shift with the 49ers if and when Trey Lance comes in and plays.
I hope
And
we see a Mahomes Trey Lance
especially like
rivalry.
let's say Jimmy Garoppolo. Let's do a quick hypothetical to top the night off, right? Let's say Jimmy Garoppolo plays the first 10 games of the season, okay, and they lose 4 in a row, right? Or maybe
Mhm.
more than that in a row, right? I mean, they've got Detroit, a very winnable game, Philly, a very winnable game. Then they've got Green Bay, Seattle, Arizona, Indianapolis, Chicago, Arizona, LA Rams. Like, let's say they lose a majority of those games. And then you've got this stretch, right? Jacksonville, Minnesota, Seattle, Cincinnati, Atlanta, Tennessee, Houston, and the LA Rams. That's a prime time that if you need to make this a winning football season to throw out your young rookie quarterback, start him.
I think Trey starts after the bye week.
Yeah, and that could happen too. But and
Mhm.
that still kind of presents a similar situation, right? So I hope he's up next, and I do agree with you that he's up next. I just don't know when it's going to be,
You
and
don't
I
know when
think
next is. You don't
yeah,
know when next
but I
is.
think when he's in, man, he's the next big thing.
Yeah.
I truly do. I like him more than any of these other rookie quarterbacks, and I like,
Mhm.
for the most, at the moment, I like all these rookie quarterbacks. I even like our guy Zach Wilson at the moment. So uh,
I don't know about that, man. I don't know about that
at
yet.
this
I don't know
point,
about that.
you know me, I get on the hype train quick and I stay on it. But yeah, I think Trey Lance, if and when he does start, takes his team to the next
Mhm.
level, and that's just going to make this division even more interesting and even more difficult to evaluate. So, nonetheless, an amazing division in the National Football League, a perfect way to cap off this podcast series of the
Yeah.
2021 season previews, man. What a blast this was, dude. I mean,
Dude, it was our first episode together, man, was
yeah,
doing this series. So
yeah.
yeah, it's been crazy. It's been a wild ride. We had 0 subscribers, 0 views when this whole thing started. So it's been fun to kind of go through this whole process. And you've been there with us, all y'all, from the very beginning.
Yeah, shout out to the Catch fam, baby. But
Catch fam is nice and strong, yo.
yeah. So it's the end of this series for the year. We'll do this every off season, right?
Mm-hmm.
But plenty more podcasts coming up throughout the regular season and even through the rest of the off season, preseason. So, but yeah, this was a blast, man. I'm glad that we got through all of these. It took a lot of time and effort. I think some of the podcasts coming up, just so you guys are aware, will probably be a little bit shorter. But nonetheless, this was a blast, man. This is what I think both of us love to do. We love to break down, stats. We love to break down the NFL. We've been doing this since we were in the second grade when we met each other. We've always been huge football dorks, so this just kind of comes naturally to us. So a lot of more content coming for you guys, a lot of more podcasts coming for you guys. But I think we're both ready as ever for this 2021 football season. I've got a feeling about this season, man. Like Black Eyed Peas, bro. I got a feeling.
Oh my gosh, dude. The fact that you're referencing the Black Eyed Peas. You're as old as the Arizona defense right now, dude. Come on.
At least I'm not as old as the Arizona wide receivers, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, we thank you all so much for watching and or listening, for sticking through any of these, this whole podcast series, for showing us support and all the fantasy content. We've got plenty of fantasy content coming throughout the entire year. Lots more of NFL debate coming for the whole year, NFL updates as well, man. So yeah, shout out to the Catch fam. We truly, truly appreciate all the love and support, all of our subscribers. And by the way, if you made it this far in the podcast and you're not subscribed, I don't know what you're doing. Go ahead and hit that sub button, because if you listen to me and Steven for that long, then you might as well be subscribed to us.
Man, if you had to deal with my voice for this long, dude, come on, just sub it already.
But yeah, man, plenty more content coming, and I thank each and every one of you, and I'll throw it over to Steven as well.
Yeah. Thank you all. I really appreciate all the support that y'all have been putting in over the past, month or so. And this has been a really great series, but also, if you guys just want to give us some advice or, some tips, or maybe just let us know what you want to see. I mean, we would be happy to do some, videos that are a little bit unorthodox from what we've done in the past and what this channel is focused on in the past. But we would love to kind of make some unique tailored content for you all in terms of breaking stuff down. Who knows, maybe you want to break down the receiving group of, XYZ team, you know what I mean? Just let us know and we'll do it for you, and we'll try to do the best job possible.
Absolutely, brother. So
yeah,
with that, we cap off the series and we get ready for the upcoming 2021 football season with plenty more fantasy content on the way. Like I said, I thank you all very much for watching and or listening. Go ahead and smash that like button, as it really truly does help us out. Go ahead and hit the sub button, as it really does truly help us out, and drop some comments down below with whatever you please. And as always, remember, you saw it here on The Catch.